Do these questions ever wake you up in the middle of the night? How am I going to pay for the high cost of long-term care? What would happen to my minor children if something happened to me? If I was unable to make decisions for myself, do my loved ones know what my wishes are regarding health care? Should I have a last will and testament or a living trust? You're listening to Bulletproof Estate Planning with Estate Plan Stan, where we address these questions and many more. Estate planning is not just for wealthy people. I've made it my mission to tell everyone who will listen that estate planning is for everyone. Don't wait until it's too late. Your family will thank you.
Hope everyone's doing fine on this August the 15th. Gosh, we're halfway through August already. Getting a lot of rain here, and Fred the hurricane hadn't even got here yet. It's not going to be here till next week. A little later this week. Always amazes me how a hurricane can come into the Gulf of Mexico and then come up here to Tennessee and rain on us for 3 or 4 days. That's just always... I find that hard to believe, but anyway, it's coming, so it's going to be a wet week. So, hey, listen, I want to first start off about some of the free educational seminars I have coming up. First one coming up, less than 2 weeks now, August the 25th. That's a Wednesday. And we're going to be doing that at the Star Theater, right on the square in Pulaski. It's a nice big venue where we can spread out. You know, you can wear your mask if you want, or we can just have our social distancing, or just whatever you feel comfortable with. That's on August the 25th. We're going to do that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a Wednesday. We're not going to do the evening seminar because Wednesday and most folks likes to go to church. And so come to that one. It's called Wills, Trust, and the Nursing Home, which is what we talk about. Having another one a couple of weeks after that on September the 9th. The one on September the 9th is going to be a Thursday. That'll be at the WLX radio station in Lawrenceburg. In the back of their building, they have got a big old venue called the Country Cafe. And, the Country Cafe back there is a big place where they dance on Friday nights. We've got a lot of room, have some refreshments. We can spread out and fit a lot of people in there. Now, I think it just barely started hitting the social media advertising, but we're already getting tons of signups. So if you're interested in coming to either one of those seminars, either August the 25th at 2 o'clock in Pulaski, or September the 9th at 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in Lawrenceburg, give me a call at Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law, which is 931-363-7222. We'll get you on the RSVP list. Come to that if you want to talk about a lot of the things I'm talking about tonight, or what I always talk about on the show, which is, estate planning, elder law planning, Medicaid planning. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, is some Medicaid planning and, what is it? Why do we do it? The, ethics behind it, that sort of thing. So, all right. So we're going to talk some about Medicaid planning, but before I do, I'm going to I like to tell what happens here in my office, some real life stories, or what I call case studies, so that you can compare them to circumstances you may have. And what had happened this past week really was, it started out as a worrisome story and ended up as a real success story. So, what had happened was, had a family come walking in here where one of the family members had been taking care of their mother, an aging parent. And, that's probably a common enough scenario. You'll see people taking care of mom and dad all the time. It's been going on for about a year or two. And it turned out that, it was dementia related. So it was progressive. And of course, when when you're caring for someone like that, usually the full scale care gets to be a little bit too much at some point in time, because it starts to become 24/7 as the dementia progresses, and the person needs more and more help on all the different, what we call the ADLs, activities of daily life. And when somebody, gets to the point where they need help with, 4 out of 6 of them or 5 out of 6 of them, it's just way too much for a person to do, because it's just completely full time. So anyway, mom reached this stage, they had to put her in the nursing home. But the problem was, and here's what happened, the nursing home jumped the gun and said, hey, did you fill out a Tenncare application? Of course, they said no. And they said, hey, we'll be glad to do one for you. Well, and that's true. The nursing home will do that. But here's the thing. They'll just fill out the application, answer the questions. They don't do any planning. Okay. And this is a prime example of what can happen when that happens. Now, I'm not bashing the nursing home. They are helpful in submitting those applications, but they don't do anything, like I said, planning, trying to make sure you save as much money as you can. They just tell it like it is. And when you tell it like it is, it may not be the best time to apply, and sure enough, she was denied, which is what brought them to my office, because she had too many excess assets. Now, no, in the neighborhood of almost 200,000. It was about 170 some, but let me just round it off to 200 because we're on radio and it's hard to do numbers, so I'll use nice round numbers. So she had like 200 excess assets. Now, again, you've heard me talk about this on the show. She had too many excess countable assets. Now, everybody's heard, when they talk to their neighbor, talk to their brother-in-law in some other state, or they talk to a friend. Everybody's heard that in order to qualify for Tenncare, you have to have down to less than $2,000 of countable assets. And that's a true statement. But what everybody focuses on is the $2,000. What the word you really need to focus on is the word countable. Less than $2,000 of countable assets. Now, countable is a classification. It's a category or a column, I say, that we put our assets in. So, it doesn't mean less than $2,000 to your name, which is how it's interpreted, which is a big mistake. So these folks were told they have too many countable assets, $200,000 too many. So they denied the Tenncare application. So they were somewhat in panic mode because the nursing home tells them, well, you got too much money, you got to spend it. And they tell them the best way to spend it is just private pay for mom at, hers was a little over $8,000 a month for her care. Private pay for mom until you get down below $2,000, and then we'll apply again and she'll qualify. Well, they should have known that before they put the application in, because you had to disclose your assets. And, they just kind of throw a monkey wrench in when they do that. My cardinal rule is we don't file a Tenncare application until we're absolutely positively sure we're going to be approved. So we would never have filed that application with that $200,000 of excess countable assets. We would have done something with them first. But these were the circumstances that were presented to me. And this is the problem I had to solve. So what do? We got way too much money. They turn us down. We're bleeding to death to the tune of $8,200 a month. We don't want to spend it all. We want to save some so we can make mom stay better. So what can we do? Well, it turns out that somebody in the family was a caregiver, had been doing so for a year and a half or so before. And here's a strategy that we used to save every bit of that money, of those excess assets, and keep it in the family. So here's what we did. There's a little known strategy called the Family Caregiver Agreement. And it's kind of what it says, but it's got to be done right for it to work. Now, this gal had been caring for her mom for a year and a half. So it wasn't anything really new, but, there was no agreement in place. Now, the Medicaid rules will let you enter into a family caregiver agreement. So you take a family member, and this can extend to in-laws, grandchildren, that sort of thing. Some of the other exceptions are strictly limited to children, but we'll talk about that some other day. So we have to enter an agreement. Now, the agreement has to satisfy a few things. We call it Medicaid Compliance. So the agreement had to be in writing. It had to talk about a reasonable number of hours a week. In this case, it was about 20 hours a week. And at a reasonable pay, which is about $20 an hour around here is reasonable. And it has to be what we call actuarially sound. So, mom was about 90 or something, 91, if I remember. So her life expectancy was 8 or 9 years, almost 10. We'll use 10 for easy math. And so actuarially sound means you can't enter into an agreement to take care of mom for 30 years when she only has a life expectancy of 10, according to the Social Security actuary tables. So, and you can't be duplicious. Duplicious means you can't duplicate the services that Tenncare was doing in the nursing home. Okay, the nursing home does not take mom to Walmart every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So that's something she can do. She can sit with mom and play games. She can bring her things. They can go for walks. So she's going to spend 20 hours with mom by this agreement. Here's what we can do. At $20 an hour for 20 hours a week for 10 years, we can pay this caregiver a lump sum. And if you do the math, it's about $200,000. Okay. So what we can do is we can take $200,000 in a lump sum and pay it to the caregiver. Some people say, well, I don't want to get paid for caregiving. It's my mom. It's my dad. I do it out of love. Hey, I get that. And don't jump to the conclusion that this is about you. It's really not. This strategy is for the applicant, the Tenncare applicant. So what we've done was we moved $200,000 out of the applicant's countable assets, which is why they were denied, right? And now they've gone to the family caregiver, which keeps them in the family. So what's the economic result of that? Well, the economic result is the main thing that the caregiver, family caregiver agreement is to accelerate eligibility. And we did that. We did that in a day. We moved $200,000 lump sum to the caregiver. Now mom was down below her $2,000 of countable assets, and she immediately qualified. She's immediately eligible. Now the $200,000 stayed in the family. It went to the family caregiver. Now, a couple of things, mom's getting the care she needs. The caregiver is getting compensated for it, which you should anyway. And the caregiver or the family member now has a ton of mom's money to enhance mom's stay at the nursing home. So if she decides, we need a private room for mom, we got this $200,000 that we can put in every month to elevate, because Tenncare doesn't pay for a private room. They'll give you semi-private. So, we can enhance her quality of care. We can make her stay there a lot better. The caregiver can show up and take her to Walmart 3 times a week, whatever those reasonable services were. And, we can seriously enhance her ability while she's qualified for Tenncare, where Tenncare is carrying most of the load. And what the economic result of that is all that money was saved. You didn't have to go through the spend down process. You don't have to spend it all and get rid of it and then end up with nothing. So anyway, that's just one strategy. And that's part of the Medicaid planning we do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Medicaid planning coming up here after the break. But so stay with me. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be back with a little more Bulletproof Estate Planning with Estate Plan Stan. I will see you in just a few minutes. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about Medicaid planning. Why? Well, because those are the kind of calls I get all the time. That's what everybody wants to talk about. We try to spread it out on this radio show and do a different topic every Sunday night. But tonight I'm going to talk about Medicaid planning. Now, don't confuse, when I say Medicaid, don't confuse that with Medicare. A couple of Sundays ago, I did a whole show on the differences between Medicare and Medicaid. Now, again, I know there's only 2 letters of the alphabet different, but they are way, way different on what they do, and they are very different on what they'll pay for. So I'm not talking about Medicare, that's your insurance. I'm talking about Medicaid, and when I talk about Medicaid in the state of Tennessee, it's called Tenncare. Every state has their own version of it. Ours is Tenncare. So Tenncare and Medicaid are identical. Tenncare is just Tennessee's version of it. And, sometimes I get people that call and say, I was talking to my brother in Ohio, and he's telling me he has to do this or that to apply for. I'm thinking, okay, well, each state is a little bit different. And you're hearing some Ohio rules there. So, you got to kind of bounce them off the Tennessee rules, because some states are quite a bit different than others. They all have to stay within the Medicaid Act, but they're free to navigate inside the Medicaid Act and be a little different. So, okay, so what we say Medicaid plan. What is Medicaid plan? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. That's what we're going to pretty much answer that question. I'm going to start off with what I call the good news. What is the good news? Well, the good news, people, in general, the average people are living much, much longer than they used to. I mean, you can agree with that, right? I mean, there's a lot of health shows on this radio station. People are generally healthier. Modern medicine, it helps us take care of things and live longer. So, the good news is we're all living much, much longer than we used to. Now, what's the bad news? Well, the bad news is people, on average, are living much longer than they used to. Okay. So that is the good news in the bad one. Because why is that a growing problem? Well, let me rattle out some statistics. 40 million Americans are over 65 years old in the United States of America. Now that's 13% of the total population. Now, the ones that are over 65 and turning, at least in that time frame, are the baby boomers, right? Now it's projected, because of the baby boomers and the next generation behind us, which Generation X or whatever they call it, 80 million Americans are going to be over 65 by 2040. That's just 20 years from now, 19 years. So, then as well as now, right now, 75% of people over 65 years or older require some level of long-term care during their lifetimes. And further statistics are half of those, 50% of those, will be for a minimum of 1 year, a minimum of a year. 20% of them are over 5 years. So by far, the average stay is in the neighborhood of 3 years. But and another statistic that I think is pretty scary is that you got 75% are going to need long-term care sometime during their lives. 7 out of 10 of those that go into long-term care will become impoverished within 1 year. They'll be broke. And here in the state of Tennessee, the average nursing home cost is about $7,500 a month. So do the math. That's a high rate of financial bleeding. It's no wonder people are panicked when they come into my office when something's happening. So, the cost is just exorbitant. It is an expensive proposition. I mean, and long-term care costs are increasing every year, and COVID's just going to run them up even more. I mean, the long-term care costs in a lot of different categories are rising faster than inflation in some of the recent years, and inflation's going up by the month here in 2021. And we can break it down a little more. It's anywhere from $19 to $38 an hour, but even assisted living here in Tennessee, which is our lesser form of long-term care, is about $4,000 to $4,500 a month. So I've got a client right now that's dealing with $330 a day. Now that is expensive. So, all right, now what is long-term care? You hear me talk about it all the time. Basically, long-term care is any chronic or disabling condition that's going to require nursing care or some kind of constant supervision that can bring on the need for long-term care services. I mean, it's a broad category, but the broad category of long-term care services, it includes, a variety of different health and daily living services, either in facilities like a nursing home or in people's homes, like the assisted living or the home and community-based systems that we have. Again, for people with chronic illness and disabilities. So I've already mentioned we got we've got nursing home care, which is a skilled care facility. That's where, you're there at the nursing home 24/7 and pretty much they take care of every aspect of your life. Then we got some home health care. That's our home and community-based systems. A different kind of care that includes, visiting nurses that come in, maybe even visiting doctors can come to your home and give you the, 8 hours or 16 hours worth of shifts to help clean, help clean, help cook, help do the kind of stuff, help you dress, bathe, food preparation, all that stuff, whatever you need to help on. Then we got the assisted living, which for people who don't really need full skilled nursing home care, you can pretty much live in a facility, but you got to be, you got to be nearby so they can, stop in and help you. That's what assisted living does. Independent living is for people who, want to transition from the single family home, but they don't really need the daily assistance. So now, when we talk about the long-term care and how expensive it is, if you got a loved one going into long-term care and you're looking at, $7,500 to $8,000 a month, it's got to cross your mind. How in the heck are we going to pay for it? Right? I mean, it's got to. That's what panics people. Well, there's really only a couple of ways. One is what we call private pay. Private pay is when you just, you pony up and pay the $8,000 a month. And like I said, you'll exhaust your estate in average in less than a year. So that's one way. There's another way is long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance is a special kind of insurance, and it pays just that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's hard to get long-term care insurance anymore. And when you can get it, it's kind of expensive if you can get it at all, because they don't give it to you if you're too old or too sick. The other one is government assistance is the only other way to pay for it. And again, that's Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare will pay for some short-term stays, but like I said, I'm not focusing on Medicare. We're going to focus on Medicaid or Tenncare, which is for the long-term stays. Now, if we want to talk about private pay, a private pay patient, they pay for the care out of their own resources. Okay. Now, here's what happens when you private pay. Most patients don't have the income to cover the cost of care. So in other words, if it's going to take $8,000 a month to be in a nursing home and you don't make $8,000 a month in income, which every now and then I get a client that's got high income like that, but for the most part, by far, the average people don't make that kind of income. So if you don't have enough income, what do? You have to use your assets to supplement, right? Your assets, the stuff you own, your bank account, your investment accounts, your home, The car. I mean, you got to use your assets because you don't have enough income. So, and when you are private paying, you're charged, your care rates are charged at the full price. Now, that may not mean much to you right now, but I mean, there's some strategies we use where we can come back and reimburse the healthcare at the Medicaid rate, which is considerably lower. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like you ever go to the doctor and get a physical, and then of course most insurance does not cover just physicals, unless you're very young in life. But for the most part, it doesn't cover them. So you get a bill, it's $220. This happened to me not too long ago. Get a bill from my doctor, $220, because my insurance didn't pay for a physical. So I call them up and say, hey, my insurance doesn't pay for physicals. So what's the rate for me? And they go, oh, okay, you want the non-insurance rate? I said, yes, because my insurance won't pay for it. So they said, send us $90 and we'll call it quits. So, it's kind of like I didn't pay the full cost of care, the full price. I paid the non-insurance rate. Well, that's what Medicaid or Tenncare does. They don't pay the full price of the care. They pay a reduced rate. So there are some strategies when we reimburse for it, we can reimburse it at that lower rate. But if you're private paying, they stick it to you for the full price. That's a bummer. Anyway, this is really, private pay is the most expensive option for paying for long-term care. I'm going to say that again. If you're thinking you got enough money and so that's all right. I make enough. I own enough. I'll just private pay. Well, keep in mind that is the most expensive option for trying to pay for this long-term care. Now, I mentioned long-term care insurance. Now, that's a way to help share the risk. Okay. It's essentially asset insurance, because what we're doing is we're going to use the insurance and pay a part of our long-term care. And maybe that with our income will keep us from having to liquidate assets to be in the nursing home. So it's really, like I said, asset insurance, but a lot of people don't want to get long-term care insurance. I mean, they think it's like term life, where if you live long enough and it's just money down a rat hole, you don't get anything for it. And it's not like that at all. And really what I find in my practice is most people that actually buy long-term care insurance are people that had a family member or a friend who should have purchased it and had the private pay. That's who I see get this. But about 10% of the people have long-term care insurance, not many. Those things only pay, maybe 60% of the bill. They don't even make them anymore. They pay 100%. But the cost of the insurance is pretty high. It's cheaper than long-term care, but it costs about the same cost as 2 or 3 months worth of in the nursing home. So it could be like $16,000 a year is the premium, but it's better than $8,000 a month, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to finish up. I was talking about long-term care insurance. The problem we find with that is less than 10% of the people have it, and the reason is, it's cost too much if you can get it. And the timing is real elegant on that, because if you get it when you're in your 40s, you're going to be paying a pretty high premium annually for many years. Then when it comes time to use it, the cost versus benefit may not weigh out very well. But if you wait too long to get it, they might not give it to you. I think they cap it at 84. They won't, if it's 84 years older, they won't give it to you at all. And I'm telling you, if you got any health issues, they just absolutely will not underwrite. They won't insure because they just will not take a risk. So it's hard to get unless you're real healthy. And if you're real healthy and young, then you're going to pay for a long time. So, that's not many people have that. All right. So we were talking about the ways to pay for it, we talked about private paying being the most expensive option, long-term care insurance, which works pretty good. It pays 60%, but which really slows the rate of bleeding financially, but not pay for all of it. And the other one was government assistance. I mean, the government provides payments to nursing homes, for long-term care services, and kind of two sources. One is Medicare, like I mentioned before, which is the health insurance for people age 65 and over. And the other one's Medicaid, which is health insurance for disabled people or people that need long-term care, right? So let's talk a little bit about Medicaid. It's really split into two types. There is a lot of people say, is this welfare? Is this only for poor people? Well, there is a general health insurance for the poor. There is such a thing under Tenncare, but that's not what I'm talking about. And I don't really need to talk about that much, but basically, if you have somebody who's born with a disability and never can hold down a job, or somebody who has disabilities that, can barely, can function, but not enough to support themselves. I mean, there is a Tenncare, a welfare system for Tenncare that's just for that. I mean, it's for people who just can't take care of themselves. And that is a welfare system, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the long-term care coverage, the long-term care, Tenncare for nursing home patients, some of the home care and the assisted living residents. They're both means tested, but they're means tested in different ways. Long-term care Medicaid is what I call it, or I call it average care Medicaid. It's a public, private partnership. It's got rules that balance the cost of care between the patient and the state of Tennessee. So, I mean, they're going to evaluate what your income is. They're going to get the income, and they're going to, they're going to take care of the bill. Long-term care Medicaid does not necessarily require a person to be poor to qualify. So, listen, I run into this a lot. So if you're one of those folks out there and you think, listen, I don't want to do Tenncare. I'm a little, that's for poor people. That's welfare. It's not. Long-term care Medicaid is not for poor people. You just have to qualify to get it. I mean, there's a kind of a complicated set of asset and income rules that allow for certain categories of assets to be considered protected while others are exposed. And that, I mean, so it's pretty involved, but that's what we try to do. I mean, you don't have to be, like I said, you don't have to be destitute and poor to qualify for this. We have rules. If you have assets, a lot of people say, well, I own too much. If you go to the nursing home, like the case I started off with at the beginning, and you fill out the application, you got almost $200,000 worth of stuff, they're going to say, well, you own too much. Well, do we? Or let me put it this way. They say you own too much to qualify. And now the question I'd say, oh, do we? Well, let's see. Because we have a set of rules, like I just said, where we can do asset and income rules. We can take certain assets to be considered protected, or other ones where other ones are exposed or exempt. So we can shuffle things around a little bit. We can shift from unprotected status to protected status. And that's that whole thing I keep telling everybody. Don't focus on the word $2,000 to your name. I got to have less than $2,000 in my name, or I won't qualify. No, you have to have less than $2,000 of countable assets. It's a type of asset. It's a unprotected asset. So if we have too many countable assets that are unprotected, why don't we do something to make them be protected assets? Go from unprotected status to protected status. That's what we do. That's what I do. That's what Medicaid planning is, okay? We can also convert from an unprotected asset into an income, okay? Oh, what would that look like? Well, I may talk about it in one of these shows because I could probably fill up a whole show. It's called the Medicaid Compliant Annuity. Medicaid Compliant Annuities, we can take, let's say you got $100,000 too much and you can't qualify, or even more. It really doesn't matter. It can be pretty high, but it's too much. And you think, what do? Do I have to spend it? Do I have to spend until I've got less than $2,000? No, you do not. That is exactly the wrong thing to do, in my opinion. What we want to do is maybe we want to protect it. We protected it with that family caregiver agreement in the first case study I went over at the beginning of the hour. Well, another way to protect it is a Medicaid compliant annuity. Now, we can use this if you're a couple, or we can use it if you're single. What we basically do is we take that $100,000, that's an unprotected asset, and we purchase a Medicaid compliant annuity with it, where it pays us a monthly amount. And that usually that triggers a penalty period, and then the annuity will pay us through the penalty period, and then we'll have all this money left over that we can move on to our another generation, or to our kids, or to use to enhance our quality of life while we're in the home. So, we can take unprotected assets and convert them into a stream of income. I mean, the amount of assets and income that can be protected depends really on whether the patient is single or married. There's a lot of rules we can use. What we do is we try to focus on, what we call Medicaid planning. So like I said in the beginning, what is Medicaid planning? Well, it's, assisting a patient or future patient, to use existing laws and these financial tools that we have that are available to qualify for assistance with the costs of their long-term care expenses from the Medicaid program. Now, it's, I said something there that I don't know if you caught it. I said, helping a patient or a future patient. Okay. Listen, you don't always have to wait until somebody's in the nursing home. A lot of the trust writing we do. I mean, some people, you may have heard me on an earlier Sunday, where I talked about the income only asset protection trust. I mean, there's certain strategies we can do before you get to the nursing home. And I highly recommend that. It's called pre-planning. I highly recommend it because it's a great tool. You do it while you're healthy. Your 5-year look back is in the bag, or at least statistically anyway. So, I mean, you can be Medicaid planning is both for current patients in long-term care or future patients. Now, there's, a couple other goals. That's the main goal, but the additional goal is, you might want to pass as much wealth to your heirs, not having those assets recaptured by the state at your death. Remember, we talked about that. That's called estate recovery, when they come around after your death and take everything you have. Giving it to your heirs as an inheritance usually is secondary, though. I mean, typically we want to take care of ourselves first. I mean, that's what I tell my kids. I got 3 kids, and I say, you can have everything I have when I pass away, but your mom and I are using it first. Okay. I mean, we're going to use it first to make sure we're taken care of, right? Then if there's anything left over, it's all yours. So, but it's nice to have something to leave your kids. But I can think it's a little more secondary. Some people tell me, I don't even want to be concerned about inheritance. It's not that they have any ill will toward the kids. All my kids have got lives of their own. They're doing better than I ever did. I mean, they don't need the money. They're in good shape. So that's a secondary thing. So, and so how do we achieve these goals? We talk about Medicaid planning. Well, we achieve the goals by restructuring your assets to comply with the eligibility requirements. So, people have heard me say, if you hadn't, I'll say it now. And that is, if you want to qualify for Tenncare, there's 3 main categories to qualify. One is called medically needy. Okay. I don't get into that too much, but I mean, you got to have to be in a nursing home. You got to have a doctor say, okay, you need help with a certain number of the ADLs. Okay. The activities of daily life. You got to be in a nursing home. I don't deal much with the medically needy, other than when we file an application, we get a doctor to say that, yeah, you need to be in there. That's one group. The second group is you have to be income eligible. That deals with the amount of money you have as income. And that's what we're talking about today. And the other category that you have to satisfy to be eligible is resource eligibility. Resource means your assets. Resources, assets, I call them the same thing. That's your stuff. That's the excess stuff you have that's other than income, the stuff you own, your nest egg, the stuff that you have accumulated during a lifetime of work, you and your spouse. That's what we're trying to protect. That's what resource qualified is. We're dealing with those assets. Income is pretty easy to solve. We can shift that around quite a bit. Assets, we have to come up with a strategy. Just before the break, I was saying that Medicaid planning used to be easier. It used to be a lot easier than it is now. We used to be able to use a balloon Medicaid annuities. That was make a small payment on these annuities or have them pay you a small amount. And then at the end, just a giant balloon payment at the end. They don't let us do that anymore. Medicaid compliant annuities now have to be equal payments, no balloon payments. One of the biggest things that made it more difficult was this penalty period for gifts. Everybody's heard about the 5-year look back period. That's what everybody calls it, the 5-year look back period. Actually, what it is the ability to look back 5 years for any gifts that were made. Now, that 5 years, it used to be 3 years, but whatever it was, it used to be at the time the gift was made. But now it's at the date of the application. Think about it. That's a tremendous difference. That really makes things difficult. And the look back period used to be 3 years for those kind of gifts. Now it's 5. Okay. It's been changed to 5. Back in 2005, when they introduced the Deficit Reduction Act, that's when they changed it from 3 to 5. I mean, it just made things harder. I mean, it dramatically affected the available strategies, that we can use. So anyway, people still need Medicaid planning, even though they've changed certain things. Okay, we still need it because if you go into the home and those costs, like we talked about, it's catastrophic to you. I mean, it's just a game changer. And there seems to be fewer advisors out there now. Now that they changed the rules a lot, I think the reason there's not as many people that do what I do is because it's cumbersome, it's difficult, poorly understood. But I don't know if that's reason or not. I just know I do it. I love doing it. You know, anyway, no matter what we do, I think the really neat thing about Medicaid planning is it's still tons better than doing nothing. I mean, I guess doing nothing is a choice. I just don't think it's a very good one. But still, if you do nothing, you're going to get hammered, just absolutely hammered. But there's a lot of cool strategies we can do, and it's way better than just doing nothing. So, let's see. You know, why we do this Medicaid. I talked about why. Well, a lot of people, become aware of this the devastation of not planning, meaning spending all their money on nursing home expenses. Again, the longer that somebody waits to act, the fewer choices they have, the higher likelihood they're going to lose money to a long-term care stay. I've said to people, if you pre-plan before you're in the nursing home, I can save 100% of your assets, whether you're single or married. Okay. Now, if you wait till what we call crisis planning, where somebody is in the nursing home, I usually say if you're married, I can still good chance to save almost 100% of what you own. But if you become a single person in crisis, well, I get more and more limited as things get, down to the 11th hour. So if you're a single person in crisis, meaning you're in the nursing home, I tell people, it's usually anywhere from 50 to 70% of what I can save because, we've got these rules called the spousal impoverishment rules, which means, if your husband goes into the nursing home, we don't want his cost is $8,000 a month to be some black hole for our finances so that the healthy spouse living at home doesn't, becomes broke because of it. So our spousal impoverishment rules let us shift income assets to the healthy spouse. Pretty cool strategy. But if you're a single person in crisis, well, there's no healthy spouse at home to keep from impoverishing, right? So those rules are taken away from somebody like me, a planner, to do for you. So things can be more and more limited as you procrastinate and get deeper into it. So, people that are in crisis, they're very highly motivated to take action, right? When, so people come in here and they, hey, mom's in a nursing home. It's costing $8,000 a month. What can we do? Well, they're extremely motivated, right? Well, that's because they're in the thick of it. The better time to do it is the pre-planning stage when we can do a lot more and set things up. We can literally set things up so that when somebody goes in the home, we're in ideal position, both financially and medically, especially with something like one of the dementia diseases or Alzheimer's. It's progressive. We kind of see it coming. Now, I don't say that unsympathetically, but I say that from a standpoint of planning. There's a lot of neat planning we can do for the day that comes down where that person has to go into long-term care. When you get a stroke overnight, the next thing you know, you're in a nursing home, we don't see that coming, but, that happens too. But so anyway, there's lots of options depending on where we are in the process. Now, because it's kind of the nature of this is pretty complex. Okay. Seniors that are motivated to learn this, and find competent advisors in the area, that's why I have these free educational seminars. Okay. Try to educate people in these public forums and these workshops on the subject of long-term care to try to help you out, inform you as to what those options are. But because it's complex, the nature of this material, the Medicaid planning, you need some advisor, somebody like me or somebody like me, to help navigate this because, from what I understand, people don't hear about any of these things. I've often said on this show, I'm the only one out there talking about this. I don't know why. I don't have a good answer to that. I just assume it's because it's difficult and cumbersome and not very well understood. So, other attorneys don't do it. There are other attorneys out there that do it, but they're pretty far and few between. Go look for a personal injury attorney. I mean, you can see one from the other's office. We're polluted with them. Too many of them, in my opinion. But Medicaid planning, elder law planning, they're a little far and few between. Anyway, I mean, we can, that's what I do. I can plan for the need to achieve the Medicaid eligibility. I said earlier in the show, and this is our cardinal rule, when we fill out a Tenncare application, it's a 16-page application. Anybody can fill it out, but fill it out the right way. Anticipate the answers they're going to ask you. or the questions that they're going to ask. When we fill out a 16-page Tenncare application, we don't do it until we're absolutely positively sure it's going to be approved. Now, does it get approved 100% of the time? No, but that's a different story. I mean, that's because of the folks we're dealing with, their misunderstandings on their end. But in the long run, it's almost 100% once, even if we have to argue why we got denied. So anyway, that's what we want to do. We want to find solutions so that these excess assets that we have, these issues, we want to find solutions to that so we can obtain eligibility. And I don't mean just spend them. Anybody can just spend them until they qualify. And what's the problem with that? If you're going to spend private pay and spend and private pay and private pay and private pay until you can't private pay anymore, now you've got nothing. And now you qualify, and now that's all you have. Of course, now you're relying on a healthcare system for everything that doesn't provide everything. Okay. So we want to have some money to offset our stay and make it a better, more luxurious stay in long-term care, enhance our quality of life. So that's what we do. That's what the primary objective, like I said before, we do Medicaid planning. The primary objective is to legally shift as much of the burden for the cost of the patient's care onto the government. Now, that's, the secondary objectives are, we want to make sure that our healthy spouse, if we're married, is not impoverished. We want to make sure the healthy spouse has plenty of assets to live off of. So we want to preserve critical assets that we can transfer to the next generation, like the family farm, those sort of things. Yeah, we want to take full advantage of the laws that allow, us to protect property. Is legal planning is medical planning legal? Absolutely. Some people say, well, is that ethical? I laugh sometimes when they say that because it, I value my law license very much. I worked very hard for it, and I'm not about to throw it away by doing something unethical. So yes, it's ethical, and we do it, and we use it a lot. So if what you heard this week has piqued your interest, I'm glad. My mission is to get the message out that when it comes to estate planning, you have options, lots of options. If you have any questions about your own circumstances, I'm more than happy to take the time to answer. You can call my office at 931-363-7222 or send me an email at stan@pierchoskiestate.com. That's Stan, S-T-A-N, at Pierchoski estatelaw.com. Visit my website and check out where I'll be giving my next free educational seminar. My website is www.pierchoskiestatelaw.com. Thank you for listening to Bulletproof Estate Planning, and I am Estate Plan Stan.